The days of the Bush administration saw the breakdown of U.S. and Latin American relations. President Obama should now seize the moment to repair the mutual relationship to the benefit of all countries involved.
If Bush was unpopular in the US, he was even more unpopular in Latin America. So campaigning against Bush proved to be a very good strategy for many leaders in Latin America. Chavez, Morales, the president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa as well. So that became sort of a norm in Latin American countries. But there was a lot of campaigning against Bush more so than against the United States. Campaigning against Barack Obama in Latin America would not be a very good strategy because Obama is very popular in Latin America.
Obama is indeed very popular in this region, to the point where even Chavez is hoping to have a warmer relationship with the U.S. And according to Professor Navia, Obama's popularity has a lot to do with the way he looks.
I think Barack Obama is the most popular president in Latin America since Kennedy. Kennedy was popular because he was Catholic. Obama is popular because, after all, he looks like he is Latin American. Latin American people tend to say, well, Obama is half white, half black, he's mestizo, just like most of us. So in that sense, Obama has an opportunity. He obviously needs to transform that opportunity into reality, but he has a better opportunity than Bush ever had, and in fact, he probably has the best opportunity since Kennedy to improve relations with Latin America.
And with the established presence of new players in Latin America such as China, Russia, and Iran, the Obama administration must take this opportunity and act quickly to secure all Latin American resources. And in the opinion of Professor Navia, the U.S. is still in advantage.
Most of the other countries in the world, particularly China and India, are interested in the commodities, the raw materials that Latin American countries produce. They want to go there and buy those raw materials so that they can industrialize. The U.S. has an advantage in that regard. Latin American countries can send their raw materials, their commodities to the U.S., and the U.S. can provide those Latin American countries with things those Latin American countries want, including education. Access to American universities remains a very, very sought-after commodity in Latin American countries. So the U.S. might, in fact, go to Peru and tell them, we want your minerals, and in exchange, we offer you access to our universities, to our education, to our technology.
Another aspect that will need attention from the new administration is free trade agreements. Professor Navia believes NAFTA should be updated.
So it would be unwise to think that the free trade agreement signed in 1993 should not be updated. It needs to be updated. Now, it can be updated in a way that it will actually foster free trade, or it can be updated in a way that will hinder free trade. And that's a decision that the U.S. administration will need to make. The other free trade agreements, the most recent ones with Central America, with the Dominican Republic, Chile, and Peru, are much more modern free trade agreements. It's difficult to think that they can be immediately updated.
But even if the others don't require immediate updating, they will be affected by the economic crisis, at least in the short term.
It is also true that this new economic situation will probably undermine free trade in the short term. So we shall see, we'll probably see many countries in Latin America and the US as well creating artificial barriers to free trade. That's going to happen no matter what. But that doesn't mean that the free trade agreements will themselves be affected. In the long term, the situation should normalize.
So there are many issues that require attention, and there's a definite need to reform foreign policy on Latin America. But Professor Navia is sure that with Obama's approach, the outcome will be a positive one.
There is a summit in April in Latin America where President Obama will meet with all the presidents of Latin America. He should probably will need a vision by then to say, well, this is what I want, this is what I offer, this is what I ask from you as well. If he does that, I think relations between the US and Latin America will be successful relations.
Well, there is so many statements there in that video that we might agree or disagree, but let me start with you, Larry. There is expectation in the region that the relations will change, and obviously personalities do have an impact in how the relations go. But the United States traditionally has had a state policy, so in that sense, is it realistic to really expect too much change from the part of the United States?
Well, I think an important factor is the Iraqi distraction. During the Iraq involvement, Washington had very little inclination, perhaps very little time, desire to articulate a coherent Latin American policy. It was sort of a marginalized region of the world. And it marked time, at least it marked time in Washington. Meanwhile, in Latin America, very profound transformations began to occur. One was the value of its commodities, which gave Latin America a bargaining leverage it seldom had before. And also, you had a diversification of relationships with so-called rogue nations around the world. It was a transformation. It was Latin America achieving the paw prints of autonomy, and particularly the emergence of Brazil as a about-to-be superpower. And all of this means that Washington's leverage in the region, almost by definition, has been considerably undermined, and it's going to have to be a relationship not necessarily built on Washington's terms, but a lot of concessions to the region.
Mm-hmm. Dan, let me try one more time to go to the focus of whether it is realistic to expect real changes when it is a state policy. I do agree with Larry that the destruction of Iraq was great, but the United States has always had other things to concentrate before Latin America, traditionally and historically. And now it is a totally new Latin America that Obama is facing. So can we expect a change, or do you expect that we are going to continue a little bit of the same with some little differences?
Well, I mean, I do think Latin America has changed quite dramatically over the past 8 years. And I think one advantage that President Obama has is that he recognizes that fact. And I think the Obama administration is prepared to have a multilateral approach to Latin America and more consensual. I think that while, as you say, there is a state policy of the United States towards Latin America, at the same time, every president who comes in wants to put his stamp on U.S. policy towards the region. And I think there's a tendency to see an early emphasis on Latin America that later turns away as presidents become faced with agendas that are very full. But certainly if you look at the Clinton administration, there was the signing of NAFTA in 1993. The first Summit of the Americas was organized in 94. There's a very early emphasis on Haiti and promoting democracy in Haiti. When you turn to the Bush administration, President Bush hosted Vicente Fox as his first state dinner, the president of Mexico at that time. You had Bush attending the Summit of the Americas in Quebec in 2001. And so I think that with Obama, again, and the Summit of the Americas coming up, that you will see an early emphasis on Latin policy. The question is how much can that be sustained over the course of an administration?